Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple, to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the honor of speaking with Jake Droge. Is that right?
Droge,
my bad. That's on me. A U.S. Army National Guard medic whose journey is nothing short of inspiring. Jake served in the South Dakota Army National Guard from 2001 to 2007, where he held the rank of E4. His dedication and service have shaped him into the resilient and compassionate individual he is today. Inspired by his grandfather, a World War II ambulance driver, and his family's military tradition, Jake joined the National Guard with a strong desire to serve his country and help others. Throughout his career, Jake has faced numerous challenges and pivotal moments that have significantly impacted his life. From his early experiences in banking and collections to his transition into the reverse mortgage industry in 2007, Jake has always been driven by a passion for helping people through difficult times. His work in reverse mortgages has allowed countless seniors to achieve the retirement that they have always wanted, providing them the financial stability to stay in their homes. Jake's military service was not without its trials. A mortar attack during his deployment was a stark reminder of the dangers faced by soldiers and the complexities of military engagement. This experience deepened his commitment to his fellow soldiers and shaped his outlook on life, emphasizing the importance of a positive attitude and support for one another. Today, Jake is not only a nationwide expert in reverse mortgages, but also an advocate for veteran and military spouse-owned businesses. His dedication to helping others extends beyond his professional life. He carries the American flag in half marathons across the country, symbolizing his commitment to freedom and resilience. So join us as we delve into Jake's extraordinary story, exploring his military service, his career in reverse mortgages, and his ongoing mission to support veterans and seniors. Let's dive in and warmly welcome Jake Droge, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Jake, thank you so much for being here with me on a Saturday afternoon. I know a lot of people don't want to give up their Saturdays to do this, but I really do appreciate it, brother.
I appreciate just the opportunity to connect with another veteran is always a win for me. So if I can do that on a Saturday and we get a visit with others, that's perfect.
Yeah, man. So let's dive right into your story, man. This is a juicy one. Talk about your early life, where you grew up, and kind of what inspired you to join, even though we've already touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. I grew up in by Stickney, South Dakota, a really small town. Probably today, if there's 400 people there, that's probably tops, maybe maxed out at 700 when I was there. Lived on an acreage with my parents. I had 7 sisters, and my grandparents lived about 2.5 miles away from us on a little acreage farm. And really, I loved to fish. My grandpa loved to fish. That was my hero. That's who I got to spend a lot of time with. Some of my best memories are going to fish at these little lakes where nobody else would be around. I look back now, Grandpa liked to be, he didn't like to be around the crowds. So when we went fishing these little bays, I look back and I'm like, yep. And to me, I go back to those little bays 2 weeks ago. I was at one, and obviously the trees have grown up around there and everything, but it brought me back to sitting there with my grandpa, who's my hero.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. So your grandfather was a huge influence. I assume he was in the Army during World War II, correct? And so is that why the Army for you? And then moreover, why the National Guard and not active duty? Can you talk about what influenced that decision?
Yeah, I think why the Army National Guard, there was a Vermilion had the Vermilion Medical Unit, which is where I went to college at. From where I was living at that point in my life was Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was probably, an hour drive, pretty close. Um, I always had an inkling for some medical. I think that's my part of wanting to help others even today. I felt that's the way you had to help people was medically. Well, I look back and there's many different ways we can help people. But I think that's why I did the Army National Guard, where I found the medical unit. In regards to going National Guard on August 29th, 2001 is when I enlisted. I think it was the part-time soldier, still had your civilian life. My bride was also in the South Dakota Army National Guard and the Signal Corps. So it allowed us to serve, but also to be home with our families and stuff like that. So that's probably the reason no active for this boy. But I got my taste of active later.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Well, because August 29th, so what, 13 days later, the towers come down. And I imagine, are you at basic training at this point, or had you shipped yet?
I had not shipped yet. I was scheduled to like a couple weeks later. And on that note, my sister and I both joined the Vermilion Medical Unit the same day in the same unit.
Wow.
She was a couple years younger than me. So not only did mom and dad realize that they were going to have probably one going overseas, they were going to have two. But it was kind of neat to have my sister in the same unit. We weren't always at the same place, but it was nice to have her there too.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what's it like? What's going through your head when you've made the decision to enlist and now, something as tragic as 9/11 has happened? Are you reconsidering that decision, or is it just amplifying the decision for you?
It was too late at that point to reconsider the decision. If I'm going to do something, if I say yes, that means I'm going to follow through. I was actually sitting at home. I was in collections, loss prevention area at that point at my previous employer, and I had to work like 11:30 to 9:30 or 11:30, 10:30, whatever it was. And I turned the TV on, just kind of as background noise, and I see the first tower get hit, and I knew then whatever was going on was, it wasn't a little incident. This is macro. This is going to have worldwide implications. Saw the second one, and there's no doubt where I was going to be headed. My sister got to go to Relaxin' Jackson. I still give her a hard time about that for basic. And I went to Benning. And, obviously being from the Midwest, never been on, I'd been on a military base, but never anything like that. And seeing the temple that was going on at Benning, talk about wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, that was me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is intense. But I think when 9/11 happened, I knew, obviously, my faith is important to me. I felt that, this is part of my journey of life, and if I can help others, that's my goal. And I see a lot of good that has come out of relationships, and stuff like that. There's been a lot of hard that's come out of war, but I think I've seen what make people who they are, in times like that. There's people that to this day that I'd be right there with them, have no doubts or anything about what they do. So that's always something I always remember, is the good of people.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. So I'm not, excuse me, I'm not familiar with how it works. So from basic training, you then did you go to Fort Sam Houston to AIT? And then after AIT, what happens with you guys? Do you guys just kind of go home and then just wait till the next drill weekend? Or like, what is that like? Because I don't really understand, like, what is a first unit for a National Guard guy, right? My experience with the National Guard is, they're not as well trained, at least as the active duty guys, the ones that I served with. There's a lot of weird relationships that go on there, because oftentimes your senior leadership works in the same company as, the junior enlisted guys or whatever. Somebody convinced somebody to come join, and so it's a foreign world to me. I know a lot of guys who get out of the active duty and go to the National Guard end up hating it. So can you paint that picture for us? What is that actually like?
And so I'm going to speak from like the National Guard, side of our reserve, but you see a different perspective. But I think it's interesting that we both can work together when we go overseas. So yeah, like I got back in from training in April. May we had guard drill, and then we always go to do our 2 weeks. Like the first week of June, we leave for 2 weeks. Went out and did that, and then it wasn't, the following year. Then that's when we got activated in 03. February of 03, we got activated and went to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, is where we deployed out of. But yeah, you go once a weekend, 1 weekend a month, or that's what they tell you. It turns into more than that, especially when you're going to get deployed. It's like, oh boy, we're getting more than 1 weekend a month here, or we have to do a Friday night too type of thing. Thankfully, in a medical unit, I can't speak for the other units. A lot of our officers and stuff were PAs or doctors in the in our communities. So, like the ER docs, they see trauma every day. It might be a different type, but it's still trauma. So when we were over there, I felt that we provided excellent care to the people we took care of just because of their knowledge. Some of the medics I served with were nurses, EMTs, paramedics, in the civilian world. They were incredible. I was in the banking side, so I was one of the raw ones. I was like, I hopefully can get somebody stabilized enough to get them to the PA or the doc and get them on the chopper. But some of the people in our unit were absolutely amazing medical caretakers.
And that's an interesting perspective because, in the active duty, like the medics really aren't given an opportunity to be doing their job in that capacity as much as, like you said, these are real world PAs and doctors and trauma doctors and trauma nurses and like they're dealing with this every day anyway. Like it's really not a big change for them. The only difference is now it's an American soldier that was wounded by the enemy, right, instead of a car accident or another civilian, whatever. So that is definitely an interesting perspective, and I could see how my first deployment, we actually fell under the 42nd ID out of New York, and they're a National Guard unit, and their medics were shit hot. They were just shit hot, and I think you just alluded to why that is. So that's really cool. What was your first deployment? How many did you do?
I just did the one. It was
just did the one.
From when we left in February to when we got home was like 14 months.
Okay, and did you go to Iraq?
Yes, went to Iraq. We were down in Kuwait, and then we got moved up. We had our main camp, our main contingency was per se. It was at BIOP there, and they took care of the high value detainees. And there's an interrogation center right across from where our housing, our clinic was. So then we had to provide care to the people that were being detained. And then we had people out at Abu Ghraib prison. And then we had log-based sites, which was a logistical site right outside of Abu Ghraib there, right outside of BIOP. That's where I spent a lot of my time till they decided Jake's been through a lot. We better get him back to the main camp where it's a little quieter, because I was struggling mentally after that mortar landed so close. I could smell it every time I would step in that porta potty. I could smell it or hear it. I look back now, and I can laugh about it, but I sure did at the time.
Yeah, and you said that's one of the pivotal moments you experienced during your deployment was a mortar attack, and this is actually kind of leads into a weird kind of tangling of the universe with your grandfather also. And so, talk about you weren't. Did you participate in the invasion, or did you kind of get up to BIOP after Third ID and the Marines had taken the airport and all that good stuff?
We got up there afterwards because when we got to Kuwait, the shock and awe was going on. It was just, that whole period that time was there. We were actually in Fort McCoy getting ready to roll when the shock and awe night was happening, but then just the next couple weeks, we got to Kuwait, and supposedly the ship that our equipment was on was taken on water, so they didn't want to dock it, so they put it out till they get stabilized or whatever. So we actually had a couple more weeks in Kuwait than probably others did. So we started providing medical care to the Marines and the Third ID without coming back. And that's when, just talking to some of those gentlemen, that's when I realized that, it was starting to make me think of my grandpa. some of the PTSD moments, like, oh, that's what he never talked about. Because what some of those guys saw and experienced was, I don't think we share enough of that.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to elaborate on what they were seeing? I got to the third ID about 2 weeks after they came home from the invasion, 2 weeks to a month, if you throw leave in there or whatever. So life for me as a private in the infantry was awful. I've said that a million times on this show, but also hearing what those guys were talking about, that deployment, the third ID, Sergeant First Class Paul R. Smith got a Medal of Honor out of that deployment. Like there was some real, like it was some real shit going on. And I remember hearing the stories, and I didn't see this personally, but just rolling through the Carbala Gap and just bodies everywhere, just bodies everywhere. So, I didn't have the fortune or the misfortune, however you choose to look at it, to see what Iraq looked like, during the invasion, but I did see it over the next, 9 years. I would see it 3 times, and watching it change. And man, some of the shit that we see was awful. What were you seeing, and what was affecting you?
When they came back, they would come to the clinic or whatever, and they, unfortunately, the way we treat is by Motrin, right? I mean, we give a lot of Motrin stuff.
Yeah. Take a knee, face out, drink water, drive on.
Yeah. And some of them are just sitting there and it's like they're in another world. Like you couldn't really hold a conversation with them. And I thought, well, maybe it's because they're so tired, but there was more than that. I think when I really look back on it, it wasn't just they're exhausted. They're mentally exhausted, what they saw. And very few of them would talk much about it. Maybe they did amongst each other, but we were an outsider at that point. We hadn't been there with them. So I always take that in consideration that, it's just kind of like my grandpa. My grandpa always told me the same thing. It always ended at the same place. Maybe that's where they were at too. And I hope those men and women got the support that they needed where they can move on from that, because it had to be traumatic. Like you said, seeing, when you're going through war's evil, war's dangerous, war's ugly, and what they had to experience. Thankfully, I didn't have to see it to that level.
Yeah, and so the event that got you was you you were in a porta shitter and a mortar. How close was it? I mean, for those listening who don't understand mortar attacks, I don't know. For me, I just kind of accepted my fate. There's nothing you can really do about it. I mean, to the point where by the time I'm in Afghanistan on my 4th deployment, we're burning some mailboxes and some mortars come in, and I could feel the shrapnel bouncing off my pants, and I nonchalantly walk over to the concrete bunker. Like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. There's nothing I could do about it. But I also, experienced, I can't even count how many mortar attacks I was a part of, over the course of my 4 deployments. But, there's varying sizes of mortars and they all do different kinds of damage. Sometimes they don't even go off, but this one got you. And so talk about that experience and kind of how that affected you.
Yeah, we had been getting mortared there at log-based sites quite a bit. And, thankfully their accuracy wasn't very good for the most part. So, a lot of times we'd have a mortar attack, get in the bunker, it'd last a little bit, go back, go about our business. This one was towards evening. I was going to go to the porta potty quick, call it a night, and I'm sitting there and I hear it. I went, oh, like literally, oh shit, because I didn't have anything on except my PT uniform, my tennis shoes, and it did not hit the porta potty. It wasn't like feet, but it hit like near the wall, they said, which is right behind the porta potty. And I think the sound, and then in the porta potty, maybe it was amplified to me. All I know is it was probably the safest place for me to be right then, because I didn't have to change my shorts. Yeah, but I mean, I could laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny then. And I run into the bunker and we start doing checks right away to make sure everybody's okay. And the next thing we hear is medic, somebody else, someplace else on the camp. And then you just go about your job. But then we got done. I just sat there and I was just absolutely shaken. Like, that was closer than I've ever been.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
and
don't want to exaggerate how close it was, because in my mind it was really close. To somebody like you know, that had been through it and deal differently. You're probably like, oh, that was a long ways away. All I
well, no,
know
no.
is I smelt it. I felt like I smelt it. I heard it. And the blast. But it's part of my journey, part of my story. God was there watching over me, and
Yeah, and it's so is that your first like real brush with war and mortality and all of those things that are so common with us, and not to diminish your experience, because your experience and your traumas are your own and mine are my own, and it is what it is. I'm not saying my approach to the way I handled things is the right approach. In fact, it's probably the exact opposite approach that you should take. But I was a professional war fighter. That's what I did. My whole career was go to war. I tell people, like, I was a great combat soldier. I would have never made a good garrison soldier. So my career ended when it should have. But like, how did that change your perspective on service and your approach to life? Because you're gonna call it a night, so it's dark. And for those of you who don't know, there's something called light discipline, noise and light discipline, particularly back then, early on in the war. That was a big thing. I remember my first deployment, we weren't allowed to go anywhere without kit. You always had to have kit on. So you're probably already breaking the rules there, and it, because nobody wants to put on 80 pounds of shit to go to the bathroom. Like, you just don't want to do it. And I'm just as guilty. But being in a porta shitter, noise, light discipline, it's dark as fuck. And here's a mortar landing behind the wall that the porta potty's basically against. With that, you're going to have concussion. You're going to have all those smells. You probably got a little fucked up from it, whether anybody's willing to admit that or not. That's the truth, right? We're finding out now through studies that just repetitive gunshots are enough to change your brain chemistry and give you TBI. So it's not insignificant that this mortar lands, right? So how does that change your perspective on the military service and your approach to life?
right then and there, I knew that I made it through that one. So again, my faith has become stronger over the years. But at that point, I was like, okay, it's God's plan. I want to get back home to my family when this is over. But I instantly felt for those, like, you were the war fighter. You guys were the ones going, and I think of like Fallujah and the different places that everybody went. I'm like, I don't know how I couldn't have handled that every day. I just flat out know I couldn't have. So as my appreciation for others grew tremendously, of those in uniform that were doing that. The appreciation for the truck drivers on the roads every day absolutely was magnified, because I was inside a compound for the most part. They had to literally fire mortars in, versus having every which way that you could have got hit. So I think for me, it was like, wow, I'm here to help others. I'm going to keep doing that, hopefully make a difference. I'm going to go back to my family. In regards to the military, it probably didn't hit me at that point, Adam. Like, now I'm very supportive of the military and the brothers and sisters that serve and have served. But I always look at everything from a political lens now, because we were a couple weeks later, we were having basketball, and this was like things were starting to calm down, so we did have lights on at night and stuff. And we're playing basketball and got mortared again, and I'm like, and people were getting injured at times through our mortar attacks, and I'm like, why don't we fire back? Well, they're firing from the city, or from somebody's backyard in Abu Ghraib or whatever, wherever they're firing from. We send out a quick reactionary force. These guys are long gone that are doing this. And I'm like, why aren't we firing back? Well, we don't want to hit innocents. And in my mind, at that point, it triggered me that the American government, the Pentagon, the DOD, the people that are sitting in leather chairs and air conditioning way back in the States are making the calls, and they're valuing the life of somebody in another country more than the American soldier. So the whole part of never being left behind and all that was just like, they really don't care. We are just a number, and they really don't care. And at that point, for me, it was like, when I get home, I'm going to finish my obligation to the United States military. I'm always going to support them, the men and women, but I am not going to support the political machine. And in my mind, even to this day, that's why I do my short little videos. And when I see a veteran, I tell them thank you. And that's awkward for some to this day.
It's
Like, you're a
awkward for
veteran
me.
too. Why are
Yeah.
you thinking? I'm like, you guys served. You guys put your life on the line greater degree than I did.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying because having as much combat experience as I did from 2000 late 2004 all the way to my last one in 2012, I got to watch the ROE change a million times. It was always different, and you know I do respect CivCast and CDE concerns, and that's why you can't just lob mortars back at wherever mortars are coming from. I totally do understand that, but again, you have a valid point, and that as the war drew on and things would progress, like basically what I'm saying is I really believe the reason we didn't win that war is because our hands were tied behind our backs for a large part of it. And my first deployment was probably, well, I know it's not probably, it was the most lax on the ROE. I was into Crete and Mosul and Samara and kind of that whole area as right before and kind of during them finding Saddam and all of that. And then again back in Iraq for the elections, which was a totally different ROE. But that first one, anybody on a cell phone, anybody on a motorcycle, no question, and anybody out after curfew, no questions asked. You kill them. That's it. They're up to nothing good. We've got the PSYOPs teams out there dropping pamphlets and telling the good people, the civilians that don't want any part of this, to do the right thing or whatever. And fast forward to Afghanistan in 2012, and now you can't shoot at people unless they're actively shooting at you, whether you see them do something that is an act of war, a hostile act, or a hostile intention. And so, yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying about being jaded on that. You just saw it way earlier than I saw it, I guess. And to each their own. So I'm guessing that's what really influenced you to end up getting out and not spending a career in the Guard, huh?
Yeah, I didn't want to be gone away from by this point, by the time I get out, we have 3 children. I want to be all around, see their events and stuff. I don't want to miss that. I felt it was somebody else's turn. Now, if it ever had to, would I go back? I think 99% of the military people said if we had to, we would go back, for the love of our country and to save our country and for our benefit of our families. But at that point, I knew it was a good time for me to leave. I didn't really interact with anybody for quite a while from the Guards or anything. Once I was out for a few years, I just like, you know what, leave that alone for a while. But now I'm reconnecting with some of them. I saw 4 of them at my sister-in-law. She retired after 26 years in the South Dakota Army National Guard. And at her retirement party, it was on a drill weekend, and I got to see 4 of the people that were in my unit that are still in, which is amazing. So it was fun to see them, and see the success that they've had in their careers, in the military side of it, along with their civilians. So I'm thankful for that I served. It gives me more appreciation, I think, on life than if I wouldn't have. I mean, every day is a blessing for me. I love it. I mean, not that every day is easy, but you find the good.
Yeah. So let's talk about what is it like, because the Guard is a different monster, and in that transition phase, right? For active duty folks, I don't, and it may be true. I'm sure it's somewhat true for the Guard, but active duty folks, that you get this fixed mindset, your mission, one job, you're constantly doing that 10, 12, 15, 20 to 30 years in some cases, right? So you're very institutionalized. That becomes your identity and the only purpose that and you really lose yourself in that. You don't know who you are, which is what I believe, and I think I'm proving as I talk to more and more veterans who go through this, is the reason the transition is so bad for all of us, and why we're in the predicament that we're in with the suicide epidemic and all of that right now. So how does the transition work in the Guard? Because technically, most of the time, you're still doing a regular civilian job and all of that. So let's talk about your transition and what that looked like for you, and kind of some of the challenges you faced in your transition.
So I was in a collection center, and I did a lot of back-end collections before I left. If the supervisor was gone or a manager was gone, hey, Jake, here's what we got, kind of run the show. They knew they could count on me to do what what had to be done. And I trained a lot of people, a lot of new people that were hired. Well, when I got back from my deployment, some of those people that I had trained or been teammates with are now my supervisors. They had got promoted while that time. That was a reality that I've lost 14 months of my civilian career in essence. No fault. My employer was wonderful, very supportive while we're gone, and a lot of my coworkers were too. But I realized at that point it's tough to be successful in both, depending on what career you're in. I did see, several people that were in the National Guard unit had their own businesses, and then you go away for 14 months, and you're no longer getting a check from the guards or from the military because you're no longer on orders. You got to get your business back cash flowing right away. Or for me, working 40 hours a week, I had to go back to work right away. So I didn't have a transition point of downtime per se.
Yeah,
I
you
had to
had no
get right
time
back.
to really process what all had happened and what was going on. Yeah.
And then you're transitioning back with your family. My wife was a single mom, pretty much working a full-time job with drill too, and she had her way of doing things for that long. And now I come in and I think I wanted things back to how they were before, but in reality, I wasn't the same person either. It's a challenge to go right back. I truly believe if, and separate of the person's leave that they accumulate on an active duty, and it's one thing if you have a 3, 4, 5, 6 month deployment, but you get to a year deployment, I think it should be required for if you're deployed for a year, you should get 30 days of paid leave to make that transition back into the civilian world.
Well, it's interesting that you're bringing this point up. You're the first person that's actually talked about this on this show, to my knowledge, that I can remember. And we've done I've got like 40 recorded at this point. But that we called it reintegration training. After my first deployment, the Army actually had a whole program to teach you how to reintegrate with your family when you got back. It's like most Army programs, and it was shit, knowing what I know now. But it was a big problem, and I remember that too. I've got 2 failed marriages, and coming back, you think, particularly after that first one, the first one is the one that changes you, right? They all change you in some way, but the first one, you're really letting go of that person that you were, and you're really becoming that new. You're in it now at this point. And coming back, you think you want things the way they were before you left, but you really don't know what you want, because now you've just had this life-changing experience that nobody else can really relate to other than the people who went through it with you. And you really don't know what you want. And oftentimes I found, and this is true of a lot of combat guys, it was easier to be deployed and be over there. And that's actually what I wanted. I think, even sitting here now thinking about it and talking to you, it's like I think I wanted to be in that environment where things are much simpler. I'm not having to deal with the dynamics of a marriage and paying bills and figuring out what's for dinner, and in your case, going to work 40 hours a week, right? Like, I'm still working like 60 hours a week with the active duty Army when you're home, training and whatnot. But like, that's way more familiar to me, having gone through that deployment, than trying to do all the, basically be a husband and be, a productive member of the civilian world. It's like a double role that you're trying to fit into.
Exactly. And I think that's what, when I've talked to the active duty components and stuff, and like yourself, the transition is so different. And I didn't realize it till I just started chatting with people like yourself about it. It's like, it is a 180.
Yeah. So when you get back and you go back to your job, are you bitter because those people that you had trained are now promoted in front of you and your supervisor? Or, did you have challenges reintegrating into the workplace, which ultimately leads to you doing what you do now, if I'm not mistaken, right? You left that and then got into the reverse mortgage business, right?
Yeah, not bitter towards those people. I see them today. Some of those people, I mean, they've done great in their careers. It was like just more of a a gut punch. Like, man, I know their salary pay scale that they're on now versus where I'm still at. in regards, like I mentioned, my employer was wonderful, and now it's called Wells Fargo, but it was Wells Fargo Financial is where I was at. The most supportive the most supportive employer I've ever seen. In all honesty, I mean, they even, because I was making more in the civilian sector than I was in the military, they helped cover to make me whole for my deployment. How many people did that as employers? So to this day, I mention that to people, like, they were wonderful. My supervisors were wonderful, but I had to work nights. So when I got back and being gone, from my family and everything, I wanted to get a day position. And there was one in compliance that opened up within the same building. I applied for it. I got it. Was there for a couple years, probably a year and a half or so. And we got combined with a couple of different subsidiaries of Wells Fargo. And now we're heavy on the compliance. So they had about 60, probably needed about 25. I was one of the last ones hired. I come back from lunch one day. I had just got reassigned from a supervisor that I sat 3 cubicles down from to somebody in Des Moines. Get a phone call, Jake, go to this quiet room. We'll have a conversation. I go in the quiet room, get this call, hey, you're one of them being eliminated. You'll go back to collections effective tomorrow, or you can decide to leave the company. That was another gut punch. So literally I had to go back, shut off my computer and leave for the day. Okay. So I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Again, this is where I talk about the team of people, the supportive people that I had. So the next day I show up, the manager, the VP of this collection center is at my desk waiting for me. Jake, let's go talk. He goes, I found out what happened to you last night. He goes, I didn't even know about this in advance. I found out about 6:30 last night that you were coming back to my department. He goes, I know you want days. He goes, I know it's very important to you. He goes, I can find a manager or supervisor position for you today if you want it. Otherwise, just keep putting in 40 hours a week, work whatever hours you want till you find something else within the company. He goes, because I don't want us to lose you.
Wow.
And I was like, to this day, I remember Jason being so supportive. And so I did. I worked days, and there happened to be this reverse mortgage position. This was in a different entity of the company. And a previous manager that I'd worked with had known when in collections. I mean, I was in real estate collections there at the end for quite some time. And I always worked with when the seniors got on the phone, I always like to listen. They reminded me of my grandpa. I want to keep them in their homes. And I always worked well with seniors from the collection side of it. Well, she said, Jake, you really like working with collections. There's a reverse job out there. I had to Google what a reverse mortgage was. I'm like, what's a reverse mortgage? So I did that, called the manager, and it was on a Friday, and we got to wear T-shirts and jeans and everything on Fridays. We got to kind of dress down. We're in a call center. Nobody saw us. And excuse me. And I called him. He said, yeah, come on down. Let's have a chat. I said, well, I'm in T-shirts and shorts, and you're downtown and where you wear suits and ties pretty much. It's a lot more upscale there. And after a couple hours, he said, Jake, if you want this, apply for this position. He goes, I think you're a great fit. So I went home, talked to my wife about it, called my dad, said, hey, Dad, I'm looking about taking this reverse mortgage job. He said, you're going to take people's homes. Well, that's when I realized, okay, this is going to be educating more than it is selling. And that is where I knew when I got in my reverse role that this was a great fit. So in regards to being bitter with the people, no, they're wonderful people. I see them today in their careers. I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful for that team of support that I had at my civilian. They made it a lot easier.
Yeah, I've never heard such. First of all, just the simple fact that Wells Fargo Financial at the time, Wells Fargo now, I bank with them. I've had really good experiences with them. I don't understand why people talk shit about them. Like, they're still a bank. I get it. Like, you can have your opinions on banks and all that shit, but like, they've never done me wrong. But then to hear you talk about, first of all, you were making more money as a civilian than you were going to be as a deployed National Guard soldier, and they make you whole. They actually made the difference up between what you were making as a deployed soldier and in your career. And then they don't want to lose you. They see the value in you. Like that's kind of the epitome of like a workplace that I would want to be in. Like that doesn't happen, it seems like, very often anymore at all. And so I can imagine that definitely made the transition getting out even easier, right? Because you do have supportive people who genuinely care, who are decent human beings versus greedy corporate assholes who don't give a fuck about you and only want to hire you for the tax breaks, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the Sioux Falls area, we have a major banking system. A lot of veterans are here. We have multiple units. I would say the support to the veteran community in the Sioux Falls area or in South Dakota in general is so strong as a whole. So yeah, it was easy.
So let's talk about the transition into reverse mortgage. I first want you to educate us on what reverse mortgages are and how they're not harmful, because until you and I did our first meeting to invite you on the show, I had a negative connotation with reverse mortgages, kind of like what your dad had said, right? Like, you're going to take people's fucking money and put them out of their homes, right? Like that's kind of how reverse mortgage has been presented to us. Everybody, my dad, my mom, my stepdad, they all talk about reverse mortgage. That's a bad idea. Don't ever do that. So educate us. Like, that's what we're here for. Like, I want people to see this, and like, if they're interested in this and this is their way of helping people, I want them to know about this and how they actually can help people.
So yeah, so the challenge of it, I think, is the lack of facts out there versus the myths. So the FHA program, as we know now, the HECM, the Home Equity Conversion Mortgage, was actually brought in a pilot program by President Reagan as a way to keep people in their homes versus they leave their homes. And I see it today. If people leave they don't qualify for a reverse, or they safely can't be in their home, whatever the case may be, when they leave their home, it doesn't just impact them financially. They might get a sum of money from the departure home. They go pay rent someplace, but it's no longer their home. It's a lot easier for people to give up when they're not where they want to be. If it's their home where they experience memories with their husband or their wife, or they have memories of their children, they would love to have their children come back home for holidays, that can keep people motivated enough to take care of their health and their mental awareness. If you don't stay active, both physically and mentally, you go downhill. And that's one thing I see in the reverse. My mom walks 3 miles a day to this day at a minimum. And she is active. She is very mentally alert. So I think that is very important. But so Reagan brought this about, and then in the 90s, it became the program. Prior to that, and I still get calls about this, there was no FHA reverse mortgage program. So I'm going to just say I'm 70 years of age in 1980, and I want to stay in my home, and my cash flow is tight. So I go to Adam, who's an investor, say, Adam, my home's worth $100,000, but I want to stay here. And you say, you know what, I'll give you $50,000, and you get to live there for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, I own your home. Adam owns my home. So I got $50,000. I don't have to make any payments on it. Well, at the end of 10 years, Jake has been physically fit, staying active. I'm not ready to leave my home. Adam, as an investor, saying, you know what, I give you $50,000. I want to get a return on my money. The contract period is complete. So Jake goes to the media and says, Adam's kicking me out of my home because I had a reverse mortgage. No, Adam and Jake had a contract. The contract time was complete. So that's where the reverse got a bad name. Is that sort of the contracts before the HECM, the home equity conversion mortgage, that HUD and FHA have today. HUD and FHA didn't do any favors either to the program, because as long as we could pay off the liens on title, you qualified pretty much for reverse mortgage. So if I was 70 years of age and I had an existing mortgage that, well, I'll just say Adam now is the borrower. So Adam's 70 years of age, owes $50,000 on an existing mortgage, and comes to me to say, hey, I'd like to do a reverse mortgage. I'm having some cash flow challenges. Okay. We pay off that existing mortgage. Now you get to stay living in that home for as long as you want There's no end date, not like the 5 or 10-year term where I talked about the investor before. It's as long as it's your primary residence, you get to stay there. And that 50,000, let's just use that same number, is going to accrue interest based on whatever the market rates are prevailing at the time. And as long as you pay your property tax and insurance and your primary residence, that loan goes on. There is no end date. The end date is when you no longer live there as your primary residence, or you decide to sell the home. Then the loan gets paid back with interest and you take the rest of the equity with you. Where HUD and FHA didn't do any favors, they didn't have any qualifiers. As long as we could pay off the mortgage, or if you owned your home free and clear, you qualified. Well, if people don't pay their property taxes and homeowners insurance and have a reverse mortgage, it's the same thing as foreclosure in essence in a 30-year mortgage. If you don't make your payments every month on a 30-year mortgage, you go to foreclosure. In the reverse, if you don't pay your property tax and insurance, you go to the foreclosure status. So then people that were probably shouldn't have been in their home anymore, they didn't have the cash flow to be a homeowner, they would do a reverse. It almost ended up being a Band-Aid. And then when they could no longer pay their property tax and insurance, then they would run to the media or whatever and say, I'm getting kicked out of my home because I have a reverse mortgage. No, you didn't fulfill the contract requirements of paying your property taxes and insurance. That's why you're...
Yeah, so they don't want to take ownership for their part and breaking the end of the deal. Yeah, and
yeah, and unfortunately, I see that to this day.
People are people. Yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And sometimes you just can't make people understand, even in the most basic of terms, what their responsibilities are in all of this life or whatever. So, no, that definitely brings some clarity to, because whoever thought, a 70-year-old who's staying in their home for 10 years and then you're just going to rip them out of their home at the end of the day, that is awfully bad business, right? Like, I get it from an ROI standpoint, but so if now, because all that's been fixed, is there a scenario in where you still take over the property? Like maybe they live for 20 years and then they pass away in the home with no family to sell the home. How do you get your money back out of the reverse?
So let's say they live there for 20 years. There's no family, no estate or anything. The home's going to get sold, pay off the loan balance, and then the servicer of the loan will have to define where that goes. If there is family or the borrowers are still alive, any remaining equity goes to them. But in the case, let's say there is no family or anything, and both borrowers have passed away, for example, they will try to find next of kin where that goes, or however their will states. Otherwise, I think in a lot of states it just goes to the state. But
of course, it would go to the state.
The investors don't get to keep that money above the loan. That has to go back to, it's the customer's asset. Their title, their name was still in title.
Okay, that's cool. So, any cool stories about some of your favorite stories about how you've helped seniors and the difference you've seen it make in their lives doing the reverse mortgage thing?
I could go story after story, Adam. The one I'll start off with one of my first ones. Joanna was up in the Cleveland, Ohio area. Had lost her spouse earlier in life. Had a significant other, I would call him at that point. They were never married. She had a little home that in the Cleveland area. She had a cottage on some island up there, and she wanted to keep that cottage. She loved going there in the summer, and for her, the reverse allowed her to stay in her home and still be able to go up there because her cash flow was tight. Cash flow is the number one thing I see with most seniors, whether they do a reverse or not, whether they have a lot of money or very little money. Cash flow is the number one thing. So I did a loan for a lady down in the South. I think she was down in Alabama. Her home was valued at $36,000. Her husband had passed away. He had done a home equity line. I don't know the dynamics if it was his house and they got married later in life or whatever the case may be, but when he passed, she couldn't make the home equity line payment. We were able to pay that off. And she was so grateful on a $36,000 home. It was her home. That's when it dawned on me, this is her home. This isn't a house to these people. It's a transaction to me at that point, but it was her home. And I never forget that after that, I looked at a reverse from a different perspective. I'm like, if my mom was in this situation, would I want her to do would I suggest a reverse mortgage to her? And that's the approach I take. But the cash flow on this $36,000 one, at the same time, I'm working with one in Hawaii. This home was valued about $3 million, and this was during the down part of the market, and it overlooked the bay by Honolulu. And it was a generational home. So his grandparents had lived there. He lived there with his parents and stuff, and now they're passed, and he's in his 70s. And as I'm talking to him, he said, Jake, he goes, it's cash flow. And I said, well, what do you mean? You got a beautiful home. He goes, when you have a home here, the cost of living, the bigger your home gets or whatever, the more your costs are, more your taxes are. And I realized it then and there that most of my clients, when I'm looking back, and even today, it's cash flow. Because I've had a customer that had $10 million in his investment accounts, and he was doing a reverse. And I asked him, I said, why are you doing this? He said, Jake, it's basic arithmetic. It's cash flow. He goes, why would I take money out of them portfolio accounts and get taxed on it when I can do a reverse mortgage on my home and it's tax-free funds because it's part of a loan? He goes, yeah, that interest is going to accrue on that loan, but I got interest accruing on that $10,000 on the other side. The second I start taking it out, I'm getting taxed on it big time. And I was like, it's cash flow.
And that's the big difference, right? Because his 10 million sitting in that investment account, the interest is compounding. The interest on the loan is not going to compound. It's just going to be the interest that it is.
Just keeps growing. Yeah. It was just, but it was very interesting to see. When I first got in, I thought it was the need-based borrower, the people that had no money.
And well, that's what I'm sitting here thinking as you're describing it. This is, for lack of a better term, this is for poor people. Like, that's really what I'm thinking. But you're painting it in a picture. It's really just a cash flow problem. So, maybe they don't have, a tax-free investment vehicle that they are getting a check from every month. And, Social Security is obviously not enough to cover shit these days. So, it's interesting to see it runs the gamut. You got a $3 million house in Honolulu and a $36,000 house in Alabama, and they're both doing this. I think one of them is probably a little bit more educated financially than maybe the other one, but that's really the only difference.
Yeah, and this gentleman with the 10 million, he was in the insurance and financial asset world. Excuse me. So his, like you said, his knowledge of the financials is a lot more, but he actually educated me, because I was like, this is not the need-based borrower. Maybe I'm looking at the people that need this because I want to help them, but I can help a lot more. So when I visit with financial advisors to this day, they have their preconceived ideas about it too. And some were like, I never knew this is how it truly worked. I could have helped a lot more people. Their money could have lasted longer because we could have used the reverse assets along with their IRAs and stuff versus, if they have to have a cash flow amount of X and it's short and they're eating into their IRAs, that IRA or that savings account, whatever it is going to get extinguished a lot quicker. So a lot of times I'm working in tandem with their advisors, with their family members, sometimes their attorneys, to see what is the best plan, because you can't leave sometime your biggest asset, which is your home and the value of it, out of a financial plan. And unfortunately, that's done to this day in many cases. But I will tell you, the reverse is not for everybody. It has to be a good fit, just like anything.
Yeah. And, the financial world, like, the more I talk to people in the financial space, like you and some other infinite banking guys that have been on here, and just some other investment guys, I have a mentor who's a VC right now, and we are not educated at all in the fiscal realm at all growing up. I mean, I was in my 30s before I have an inkling of how money actually works. And that's a problem, because, whether we think so or not, if you look at somebody like me who, from 2003 to 2015 spent 50 months overseas, tax-free money, there was one bonus in there. Had I been educated enough, I would be sitting really, really pretty today. And that is absolutely not the case. In fact, the very real case is that I structured my finances in a way to give myself the longest runway to make the strategic veteran, give my time 100% to this, take it as far as I can go, but I'm running out of runway, and that's scary, which is part of owning a business. But whatever, that wouldn't be the case if somebody would have educated me, or if I would have known where to go find information, quality information, because we're sitting here having a conversation about reverse mortgages. Not only are you educating the families, you're educating people who are custodians of these families' monies, who are not using this investment vehicle or this loan program or however you want to refer to it, because they just have this preconceived notion of what it actually is. So what do you think needs to happen in order to break that stigma and get some of these money guys on board with this is a better way to help people? Granted, not everybody is a fit for it, but use the tool in your fucking tool belt, man.
Well, I think some of it is the financial guys. Like when I talk to someone like Jake, if the customer does the reverse, what do I get compensated for it? Because in their line of work, if their advisor, if somebody gets an IRA or gets a whole life policy or a term life policy, they get compensated for that. They can't get compensated for the reverse because that's how the guidelines are. So they don't, they're looking at it's a fine balance to put money in their pocket and also help their customers, unfortunately.
Okay, so then my next question would be, anybody who wants to get into the reverse mortgage business, first of all, how do they do that? And second of all, how does the reverse mortgage business make money?
So to get in it, you're going to have to find a company that is hiring a reverse mortgage loan officer, because it's a long lead time. When I talk to a normal customer, and when I say a normal situation, and there's going to be some that move forward in 2-3 weeks from the first time I talk to them. We go through the proposals and how it impacts them. But I've had some that we've had to work on a 5-year plan because they've owed too much on their home. We couldn't make the numbers work. But I would say my average is close to 6 months.
So it's you're operating on a 6-month sales cycle.
Yeah, and then by the time, if that's when they start the application, and then you go through an application process, which could be, in closing the funding, depending on the appraisal timeline, it's probably another 60 days. You got to have a long runway, kind of like what you're talking about with the strategic veterans. So I think it's tough to get in because right now with rates high, volumes are down, but there's still people that need help. How do the banks or the mortgage companies or whatever make money on the reverse? So if I originate a loan through my company, after the loan funds and everything, that loan gets sold on the secondary market, which becomes part of a mortgage-backed security. That's when my company gets paid and I get a portion of that. People have asked, Jake, why don't you start your own mortgage company and just do reverse?
I was going to ask that question. That was going to be my next question.
It's all the stuff that goes into it. The compliance, the servicing, all the background. You have to have a warehouse line of credit. So if this loan gets audited and let's say HUD audits it and says you didn't do something right, you got to buy back that loan. So you got to have big capital.
Yeah, you got to. It's capital intensive. First of all, the first word you said, compliance. I have an insurance industry background, and compliance is the biggest thing. Fuck that. I'm staying away from that. Like it's no different than the story you told. Wells Fargo Financial turned into Wells Fargo, merged with some other companies. I think one of those companies was Wachovia. They owned a loan on my first house when I lost that in the crash of 2008. And I know for a fact Wells Fargo and Wachovia merged because I was involved. I had a loan through Wachovia, and one day it shows up it's Wells Fargo now. But all of that, it's so complicated. It's so complicated, and they have entire departments for compliance. Like when I worked in the insurance industry at the Allstate agency, we had one guy who got paid 6 figures a year just to make sure we were compliant. I mean, like it's a big freaking deal because that agency owner can go to prison for not being in compliance.
Yeah. And I tell people, I said, if you're in the reverse mortgage industry, you got to be playing for the benefit of your customers. Because I said, for me to be able to originate if I'm with a mortgage company, like not a bank, like not a federally chartered bank like I am right now, but if I'm with a mortgage company, I got to get licensed, so I have to pay a fee. If I make any money, I get taxed like crazy. And if I don't make any money, they'll do an audit and find something that they think we did something wrong on a loan, and now they fine us. So I said, they're going to fine us, fee us, or tax us. So I said, that's why I think when you look on a bigger scale, people are like, there's other ways to make a living. But I'm passionate about it because I love keeping people in their homes. And there was a couple years ago, I went back and looked at all my past customers for like the last 24 months, 12 to 24 months. Over 50% of them were a veteran and their spouse, or the surviving spouse. So I feel I'm making a difference to the greater veteran community at a different stage of their life than transition. It's a different transition of life. It's from
like
the
just closing
workforce to
another
retirement.
chapter. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man. No, that's awesome. Which brings me into all of the advocacy and personal growth stuff you're working on. You know, it's not a secret that the Flag Man is passionate about supporting veterans and military spouse-owned businesses. I love what you're doing on LinkedIn with that, and we're going to get into the other thing. You know, one of your goals is to run a half marathon in all 50 states. So talk about some of those initiatives that you're involved in. It's really cool that you went back and looked at some of your past customers for the last 24 months and found out over 50% are actually veterans. Was that by accident, or is that just how it worked out? Like what, like, did you seek these people out? Do you think they're drawn to you? You know, what is it?
I don't think I didn't seek them out because I wasn't buying leads or anything like that. A lot of my referrals come from other banks or relationships I do where they don't do reverse, or financial advisors or whatever. And I've been doing this since 2007. So word of mouth is big for how I get my business.
Yeah, 17 years is a good time to build up a good network and word of mouth referrals and all that good stuff.
And
Totally.
I went and got an extra certification called a certified reverse mortgage professional. And there's roughly about 160 of us in the country, give or take, depending on probably the month. So I think people know I'm vested in it. And knowing that I look at it from a perspective that I'm going to put my mom in your situation here, and I'm going to, we're going to go over the proposal and stuff, but I'm going to state if I think this is a good fit. If my mom was in your position today, would I say, Mom, I think you should move forward with this? Or maybe not, or maybe you got to look at other options before you look at the reverse. And when people know that and they hear that in my voice, I think there's credibility there, that I'm not just trying to make a paycheck. I want to go to sleep at night knowing I did the right thing. And it's a whole lot easier when I know if my mom was in your shoes, this is a good fit or not.
So let's take a little time to explain to the listeners right now, what makes a reverse a good fit. Like, can you kind of war game some scenarios that might make sense? Now, I know primarily the audience is about my age and your age, so 30 to 55, 50, 55, but I think this is a valuable education that you can get right now to put a tool in your tool belt for later in life when you may need this, because he's just proved that even somebody with $10 million that they have access to will still use this product. So talk about, I know you say cash flow, but like give a scenario and like what that actually looks like, because some people don't even know what cash flow is.
Exactly. So I'm gonna bounce one off that I just sent an app out yesterday on. Their home is probably, they've lived in it for 30 years. They're in northern Minnesota. They still owe roughly about $300,000 on this home, roughly $800,000 value, give or take. They're in their high 70s, low 80s. That $300,000 is, some was home repairs. They lived there for 30 years. They have expenses. It's on a lake, so on a lake property, you generally have more expenses. I think they help some family out, but You didn't dig. I don't dive into that part unless they want to share it. But for them, it's the cash flow. If we pay off that mortgage, that principal and interest payment that they're making right now of over $1,000 a month plus taxes and insurance, so we'll pay off that existing mortgage balance. They're going to get, the way they view it a lot of them say it's just like I got an increase of $1,000 on my Social Security check because it's not going towards that principal and interest payment. So most of the time I'm paying off a mortgage. So for the audience, the younger audience, the 30s to 50s, this isn't for us today, but it might be like we get a 30-year mortgage at age 55 and we're going to retire we want to retire at age 65. How do I get my mortgage balance down far enough, if you did a loan at 80% loan to value at 55, how do I get that loan balance down enough within 10 years when I still have 20 years of payments left, where I can do a reverse now, get rid of that principal and interest payment for as long as I live in that home, and I don't have to make 20 years of principal and interest payments on that home. So that is for us. Like, how do we plan as this as a strategy going forward? Because I'll be 50 here in September. If I look out and go, where am I going to be at age 65? I hope I'm in good health. I want to be able to enjoy life. I hope I have grandkids I can go visit. I want to go visit all 50 states. I want to travel. My wife loves to travel. How do we plan for that? And hopefully the reverse can be that option. I think more importantly, we have to look at our parents and grandparents right now. A lot of them are not living. And what I mean by living is they're still working. Some of them, unfortunately, because they have to, not that they want to, they have to work because of their cash flow is so tight. They don't have the assets to just be able to retire and go do what they want to do. They still have to work. So, and then there's those that can no longer work, but they want to stay in their home. How do we catch those early enough so they don't ruin their credit, so we can do a reverse mortgage that they can stay in that home that they want to be? And that is where I think we can make the biggest difference, is helping our parents and grandparents.
Yeah, man, that's a sore subject for me, because one of my goals with everything that I'm doing is to retire my dad. My dad is 67 years old, and every time I see him, he's going to work till 72, 73. Last time I talked to him, it was 74. And it's like I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know what my dad's financial situation is. I know that their mortgage is very low. I know that my stepmother is a whiz with money because she managed my money while I was on deployment before and put me in a better situation than I was in. But to me, my dad is at a point in his life where he's even talking about, I'll probably never stop working because it's all he knows. And it's like, have you really enjoyed life, Pops? Like, have you truly been in a position where you can just go enjoy yourself, take that trip? You know what I mean? Like, do that thing, buy that Lincoln that you want to restore, and actually do that, because that's what brings you joy. And that's not what I hear when I have conversations with my dad. It's someday I'll have that. Someday I'll have that. It's like, you're goddamn right. Someday you're going to have that, because someday I'm just going to show up in your driveway with a tow truck and I'm going to drop it off, because I know that you're never going to do it.
The fear of running out of money, the fear of having to sell my home, the fear of having my car repoed, the fear of not being able to pay for my prescriptions. I had a customer one time where she was cutting her pills in half and she couldn't get her stuff regulated. And when she said, I'm cutting my pills in half, I said, are they supposed to be in half? She goes, no. I go, does your doctor know that? She goes, no. I said, you need to make a phone call to your doctor. They're trying to give you doses and you're taking half of it. I said, how can they regulate if they don't know the whole story? She goes, well, that way I only have a prescription every other month. And I just thought, this is our seniors. These are our people, the greatest generations. They've worked hard their whole life. And like you said, Social Security isn't enough. The cost of living has gone up. They're really struggling right now.
It's funny that you say that. I had a brief stint in Medicare when I was in the insurance industry. Is the last thing I did. So I tried everything from, health and life to property and casualty to Medicare and Medicaid. And I have heard, that was the easiest sell in the world, was being able to put them on a Medicare plan that would just cover their drugs, so they're not doing stuff like that. And then, that's a whole nother conversation we could have with what the pharmaceutical industry is charging for these fucking drugs, which is just asinine to me. I don't understand it, but that's neither here nor there. So, why all the veterans advocacy stuff? Like what started all that for you? What started the half marathons carrying the flag in all 50 states? And how many have you done to this point?
That's a bitter subject because I'm behind my goal. But for the veteran advocacy, where I'm doing the little short videos and trying to just put on different social media platforms, recognizing veterans and their businesses or their nonprofits or whatever, it was at the end of 2023. I had my LinkedIn account and I've had it since like 2009, really on there once in a while. I wasn't active. I'm like, am I just wasting time on there? There's no other deal than I was wasting time. And I hate being on video. I was like, it's kind of like why I became a medic. I had blood drawn one time at a clinic, and I literally passed out. My fear of, I don't know, needles or whatever. And now it's like, I look at a needle, it's like, yeah, no big deal. Getting on video to hit send, if I record a video and hit send to put it out on LinkedIn or anything, was like a challenge for me. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it the same mind thought of if I went to be a medic, I'll get over it. And that's what I did. I started doing videos, but I realized if I'm going to do it, I have to have something that it's passion. It's not about me, because then it's going to make me hold accountable. And I was like, I cannot buy coffee from every veteran-owned coffee company. I love my coffee. Or I can't buy every product and service from every veteran-owned company. How can I help them? If I can share their message or their business or their story, maybe somebody that's in my followers and connections on whatever platform it is will remember that when they need to purchase something. And that's where it started. And now I'm getting to meet so many great people that I'm connecting with other veterans and, hearing their stories. I'm like, why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
Yeah. It's cathartic, right?
Yeah. And it's fun. And what does concern me, Adam, when I reach out, so many of them ask what the catch is. It's a free video. It's short. It's an amateurish video. It's not a professional. I'm not in a studio or anything. But they feel there's a catch. And I've asked them, I said, this is free. After I talked to them a little bit, they're like, well, I've got approached by it. And the next thing I know, I have to sign up a subscription or something. And I'm like, oh no, this is strictly, I'm just going to put it out there. I might share it a couple times through over several months. So because in LinkedIn, not everybody that you're connected with is going to see it. So put it at different times and hopefully more people see it. But it's strictly free. And now, because it's fun for me, I look forward to doing it. And I look forward to hitting send because I know I'm recognizing somebody. So like just this morning when I went and got my hair cut, Art from Art's Barbershop in Parker, South Dakota, served in the Coast Guard from 59 to 63. He's 80 some years old. And I got to do a short little video with him. He's still cutting hair, loves going in each day to cut hair because he gets to visit with people. And I mean, I left, he was smiling. Just that's the connection to the veterans groups, because there's so many nonprofits too. You could give to all of them, or you could support time between my jobs and my family. I don't have the time to go give my time to every one of them. But if I can do these videos or promote them, then that's my way of feeling I'm giving back with some value.
Well, I'm gonna help you out. He really is serious. There is no catch with it. In fact, the form that he wants you to fill out is just a really simple Google Doc that takes maybe 3 minutes to fill out. If you put a whole bunch of thought into it, which I mean, it's really that simple. It's put your social links where people can find you, put your message, who you are and where you're from. And you're doing some kind of tally, right? With veteran owned businesses from different states. So what is that? Who's winning right now?
South Dakota is winning for the state competition, which by default we should. I'm here. So it's veteran-owned small businesses in South Dakota that I've recognized, or nonprofits, or military spouse businesses count too, because I feel they've given more than probably what we have. When on our deployments, we had the easy job. It was simple, like you mentioned earlier. They're managing everything else. So I want to make sure they have the opportunity too. But I'm a competitive person. That our whole family's competitive. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, let's make this a competition amongst states. So at the end of the year, 2024, see how many businesses were in each state. So Um, and then I'm like, the military's competitive. The Marines are competitive against the Navy, the Army. Everyone thinks they're better. Well, let's put it on paper.
So who's winning that?
The Army.
You better. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Um,
Yep.
Now I am surprised. I've had several Coast Guard that have reached out, and if I think some of the Coast Guard would get their sheets to me, they're
They
not.
might be one.
They're going to be pretty close. So these other branches better step up, like the Air Force and Navy, and the Marines are pretty strong.
I need you to connect me with some Coast Guard people. I can't find any Coast Guard people who are entrepreneurs to come on this show. I'd love to talk to. I don't know anything about the Coast Guard other than they call them puddle pirates. Like that's really cool, man. And for those that are listening, like it really is just a simple Google Doc. He's genuine in it. There is no pitch whatsoever. He's been bugging me for a couple of weeks because I forgot to send it to him after our first meeting. He genuinely is doing this out of the kindness of his heart to recognize other veteran-owned businesses, and I think it's awesome. Has it been as fruitful as you thought it was going to be? Has it gotten as much traction as you thought it was going to get, or even more?
The traction's coming, but slower than I thought. I thought once I talked to another veteran that, hey, this is free. I'm recognizing you and your business. There is no subscription. I thought more would jump on it. Some just want to do their business, and they're like, no, you don't need to do that for me because I know it takes time. Like they're concerned from my thought. And I'm like, no, this is what I want to do for you. But the traction is coming. And I think
have you gotten any feedback from the ones that you have promoted? Like, hey man, because you did this video, I got X amount of business, or somebody told me they found me through you. Thank you. Like, have you heard any of those stories yet?
Not actual business, but I have had an advisor in California who said somebody asked about reverse mortgages and was, another advisor saying, hey, how's this working? He's like, hey, I just had a conversation with Jake on it. No, this is how it works. You have more questions, reach out to Jake, but felt like I educated him where he could help somebody else out. And to me,
that's what this is all about. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because hopefully we help that customer make the right decision down the road.
Yeah, and it's I talked to another veteran and some first responder podcasters and just some civilian podcasters, and it's like in the podcast space, they all just want to help me get to where I'm going, and they want to pick my brain so that they can learn how I do things. And we could easily look at each other as competition, but also we can have friendly competition with like, hey, I got more downloads than you did this week. You know what I mean? And still, this is how I did it, and help propel everybody forward. And I love that mindset because there truly is enough to go around for everybody. They're really like you're being fooled by the scarcity mindset, that the psychology tricks that are played in copywriting and all this. We're being taught that there's not enough to go around. And I absolutely do not believe that, right? I know there's a couple other veterans out there who are interested in doing the exact same thing I'm doing, helping veterans through the transition. That does not scare me in the least. You know why? Because I am one person. A, not everybody's going to resonate with me. They don't give a shit what I have to say, and that's fine. I'm not for everybody. And B, even if I did resonate with all of them and they all wanted my help, I can't help everybody. So why not help others do the same thing, and then we can all bear that same fruit? I think that's really the kind of the whole message behind what you're doing with your videos.
Yeah, make a difference and help somebody else out. At the end of the day, you can go to bed at night knowing, hey, I made a difference. Hopefully it benefited somebody. Get up the next day and let's do it again.
Yeah. So when did you start the carrying the flag in the half marathons?
So there's more of a background to that. So me and my wife used to run half marathons way back when our kids were young and before we had kids. And it was kind of fun for us. It kept us in shape. We're both at that point in the Guard, so we had to do some running. Our kids got busy. They started doing triathlons, basketball, traveling teams, stuff like that. We got busy. I'm not making an excuse. We should have kept ourselves in better shape than we did. We did not. COVID hit. Now our travel basketball season isn't happening. Triathlons travel isn't happening. I was like, oh, I'm going to go out and run 2 miles. I'm Army medic. no problem. We're in the Army. We can run 2 miles. When I say this, I was really out of shape, Adam. It was bad, but I thought I could do it. I didn't think I started out blasting away at top 10, but I must have went faster. I went faster than my body allowed. I didn't get a quarter mile, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I was like, once I realized I was just that out of shape, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just out of shape. How did I get here? And I knew at that point, I'm not going back there. I am not, once I get back in shape, I'm not going back to how I felt, where my heart's about ready to fly out of my chest, couldn't breathe. And I was like, I have to have an accountability to myself and something that I enjoy. And I always wanted to see all 50 states. That's one of my goals in life. People say, well, you want to go travel to Europe and all these other places? I said, you know what? I got 50 states I want to go see first. I'm very patriotic. My grandfather was. My dad was super patriotic all the way up to his passing. And the flag to me represents freedom to our country too. But it also, it's freedom. So for me, it was to get my mobility back, my ability to run back. The flag is representative of that freedom, that it takes work. We don't have our freedom by not working. We have to work hard to keep it. And that's the same thing. So my first race was a couple years ago in Crofton, Nebraska. I thought I was in Crofton, didn't realize it was a state park on the south side of the Missouri River. I thought it was a flat course. Well, it's in the river bluffs. To this day, it is my favorite half marathon I've ever done. It's one of the, since I started carrying the flag, I've got 6 states down. I hope to get 6 more in this year.
That's so many miles.
But I love it. Like my wife and I went out for a short exercise this morning. Our burner wanted to go along, so I ended up doing a fast walk. We have a Bernese Mountain Dog. I'll probably go out again today just to get a couple miles in at a higher speed. But we just decided that the halves or something, we go make it little mini vacations. You know, like I hope to be able to go and do one in Atlanta yet this year. That might be in September. I'm already signed up for the St. Jude's in Memphis, December 7th. Why did I choose St. Jude's in Memphis? People are like, why are you going to Memphis? In my reverse journey, I met a financial advisor that has become a great friend of mine. I have some of the clients that become great friends down in that area. Not one child has asked for cancer. So if I support St. Jude's, it's like, I feel like maybe I can help make a difference to children. So I self-fund all this. I don't have a page. I'm not asking for money or anything like that, but I have to get $750 raised for that sucker. If you don't get $750, they put it on your credit card. So I can guarantee you, I got $750 committed to that. Even if I have an injury, I'm walking that sucker.
Yeah. Do you invite people to come do this with you? Do you have some followers that come and do this thing with you, or are you trying to get people interested in doing this with you?
Yep. I do not have it out published yet. I do have a USA Freedom Runners ready to go. I'm just trying to make sure I get my race. I want to have more than one race on paid for, and I know where I'm going to be, and try to get more people. And I'm going to have a flag for them. Anybody that wants to be at a half marathon or a 2-mile event, so let's say I'll use a lot of races. I'll have a 2-mile run, a 5K, a 10K, a half, and a full. If you want to be part of USA Freedom Runners, I'll have a flag for you. And you can carry that flag, and we get to the finish line. I hope someday we have 100 people at that finish line cheering that last person through.
Well, I want to tentatively say I have a buddy who lives in Memphis. So for me to go to Memphis in December, I won't be able to run it. I just had a back surgery in January. Plus I hate running, but
I got a flag for you.
Yeah, I'll walk the damn thing. I don't want to promise that I'll be there because December's a long way away right now, but I will definitely keep in touch with you and maybe we'll make that happen, because it'd be really cool to go do that with you and share that experience with you and see what that's all about. And hell, who even knows, maybe it'll start, something that I want to continue to do, especially living here close to Orlando. There's like fucking 5 half marathons a year.
There is. I'm actually, Florida's one of the states that I get to do here, and that I don't know if it'll be in 24, but I highly expect Florida will be in 2025, because I hope to get at least 6 a year. I turn 50 here in September, so if my health stays and everything, I can do all 50 in my lifetime. And so that's part of the fun. In September 20th and 21st, I think that's the dates. My wife and I did the Goggins Challenge a couple years ago, just as when I did my first race with the Crofton to get in shape. We did the Goggins Challenge, the 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. We have committed to September 20th and 21st here of 24. We're going to do our own Goggins Challenge in the Sioux Falls area again. Last time we did it, we started with 12, and a couple of them were not planning on doing all 12 of the segments, but we were the only two that finished all 12. So we know mentally how hard it is physically. I mean, you got to plan for this, but we're doing that. We are trying to get people for that one to join us. And, I'd love to see multiple. I'd love to see every military branch represented. My wife is again, Army too, but she's a huge Blue Line supporting law enforcement. She's going to carry a Blue Line flag. I'm going to carry American flag. And I'm looking for people from each branch that want to carry their flag. And I'd love to see, I hope we can get at least 20 people for that Goggins Challenge in September.
You need to damn launch that website and start promoting that, brother.
It's coming soon. It's coming very soon.
Maybe take a little bit of time to promote yourself and what you're doing, because I think this stuff is needed in the community. I think this is the kind of shit that really helps our community heal. It brings back that sense of community and camaraderie that we are all missing, when we get out. And I think being around that in a capacity that's not a Facebook group or a bar or all the negative shit, like doing something that is physically challenging and hard next to a brother or a sister is the kind of stuff that we need to continue to heal the community. So you need to start promoting that, man. I'm big hard on you need to get the website launched and let people actually know what you're doing and what you're about, because that's what makes a difference in our community.
And that will be very soon. My business coach just yesterday is like, Jake, that deadline is now. So
yeah, well, I agree with him.
And they're right. Monty was a Marine, and he has a wealthy servant, and Amy, they're business coaches, and they're pushing both my wife and I to do more in life and stuff like that. And again, we have the team. But you mentioned something about with the brothers and sisters doing these runs together. The hardest segments of the Goggins is in the middle of the night when it's dark. And how is that no different in our life when we're going through challenges of life? The dark times, we need those other people with us to pull us through. And we had one of our people from our first time in the Goggins, it was our last one, and she showed up to run the last one with us to get us to that finish line. She wasn't a veteran or in the military. She was just a friend that said, you know what, I'm here for you. We had another friend of ours that texted us saying, hey, you got this. The darkest times is when you need your people with you. And that's what I take from the Goggins is in the middle of the night, the darkest ones, you got your people with you.
Yeah, man. No, that's powerful stuff. So you have the goal of hitting all 50 states. So you only got 37 more to go?
Well, more than that. I only got 6 done. So I got
I thought you said you had 13 done.
No, I got 6 more that I'm going to get done in 2024.
Gotcha.
Next year, if everything goes well, if my reverse mortgage business is going well and everything and the financials line up, there's a series in the Northeast part of the country where there's one every day. I figured I could get 8 done in 10 days.
That's insane. At 50 years old?
At 50. And now I'm not fast at them, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm running records out here. I mean, 1 foot for the other. I do have a goal though. I turned 50 in September. I'm going under 150 because right after the Abbey Gate happened incident a couple years ago, I was doing the Sioux Falls half marathon, and I was on pace for going under sub 150. And thankfully, the Sioux Falls half marathon and everything, they're so supportive of the veteran community. I was having 13 military family members join me in the plan was to join for the last 400 around the Hardwood Field track. That's where we finished. They were going to join me. Well, some of them got excited. They amped up, with all the crowds. They started joining me about a mile out. I went from running right at 8-minute miles to 13:52 last mile, and I finished with like 152.
Damn.
So I missed my 150. And the Crofton one, I think I went, and like I told you, that was hills. My very first one carrying the flag, I went like 154. So I know I can do it with the amount of training. I'm going to have to cut some more weight by my ones after September, but I can do it. I know I can. It's going to be a battle, but if it's not a challenge, then what am I doing it for?
Right. No, that's awesome, man.
So I look at it as I got 44 mini vacations planned.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. You satisfy the travel bug, you stay in shape, you do something hard, you lift people up, you inspire people. That's amazing, man. Good for you. Finishing up here, brother. What advice do you have for veterans to ease that transition and to really kind of avoid falling into the transition hole? What would you want them to know so that they can avoid that as much as possible and live a fulfilling, joyful life?
So I'm going to break it up into, because I don't know your transition as well as like the National Guard. So, but I think the common denominator is have a plan. And maybe we get that independent third party. Hopefully you have a friend or somebody that can counsel you, but maybe they're in the same boat as you. They're lost too. I mean, they're making the same transition going, what the heck is going on here? Maybe you get that coach, that accountability partner, not specifically a counselor because they're dealing with your mental or whatever. Somebody that's saying, hey, what's your plans in life? Do a deep dive of what you really want. I wish I would have done that a long time ago. But when you make the transition, especially for like from the National Guard, there are some that I know that are leaving the service this year they're lost, Adam. They don't know what they're going to do. They're going through life doing a civilian job. You look at them, they're drinking way too much. They stopped exercising. They're on medications. Like, let's don't do where Jake was, where I was out of shape. My blood pressure milligrams kept going up every time I went to the VA. Don't be me. If you're not 50, you're probably in your 40s. Don't get there.
Yeah.
And the active duties, you might even be younger yet.
I lost 100 pounds over the last year since my ayahuasca journey. It took ayahuasca to really show me what I was doing wrong and unlock some things for me. And the podcast I just did before this, I had an in-depth conversation about, they don't have to be, you can achieve all of this without that. You've done it. You're walking proof, but rely on your discipline, stay disciplined, stay physically fit when you get out, because that's really what's going to build up your mental toughness to be able to make the transition better. And don't let yourself go. I was like you, man, 311 pounds. My blood pressure's through the roof. My cholesterol is off the fucking charts. And, you can reverse all of that. In less than a year, I reversed all of that. My blood work looks like I'm 24 years old again, right? Like I feel, other than, the obvious physical injuries that we all deal with as we get older, I genuinely feel like I'm in my late 20s again, which is awesome. You know what I mean? And yes, that's exactly. It doesn't matter. National Guard, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard. It doesn't matter. Like there's a physical aspect of this. There's a mental aspect of this. There's an emotional aspect of this. There's a social aspect of this, and there's a spiritual aspect of this. And until you balance all five of those things, you're in for a rough ride. I would say, my personal, opinion is focusing on those five things will always lead you in the right direction in life.
Agreed. And it don't try to do it alone. My faith, like I said, has grown. Am I the strongest Christian out there? By no means. It's a work in progress for me every day. But I know when I go to church, I feel better. I know when I get out for the physical, if I go out and do a fast walk or do stairs or go for a run, sometimes it's just a simple walk. When I get done, I feel better. If I'm having a rough day mentally, which we all have, tired, fatigue, whatever it may be, our minds can be the first thing that get impacted. Think about the good times, focus on that, reach out to somebody that is in your corner, and realize there's a lot more people in your corner, but they're just not aware. When I get to do these little, like my veteran serving veteran document that you filled out, some people want to talk to me. Like, hey, can I call you? I said, yeah, I'll fill it out. Well, that never turns into a 5-minute phone call.
No, it's like an hour probably.
It does, and it's fun because I feel like, you know what, I will never be a business coach because I don't feel that that's my expertise. I don't have time for it. But I will challenge people sometimes saying, what's your big picture? What drives you? I hear you're doing this business, like you said. Thankfully, they're working for themselves, but some people's businesses aren't going well. I got one that I'm going to be sharing here. It's a struggle. And I said, you know what? Then let's do this. Let's try. And I'm going to do everything I can to bring awareness to you. And it's like, well, I don't know where to go to get the assistance. I don't know who I can trust and stuff. I'm like, I get that. You're going to realize who you can trust by having a conversation, building relationships, get the right relationships. And that's in life. Have the right relationships, just like in business.
And that's just it. And the only way you can build those relationships is to put yourself out there and start reaching out and networking with people. It's so funny because this is the fifth one in a row that I've done in the last week. And everybody gets asked the same thing. What advice do you have for transitioning veterans? And it always comes back to networking. Like here lately, I don't know what's up with that, but it's so true because everything that I have right now with the strategic veteran has come through putting myself out there and networking with people. And some of the greatest people I've ever met who give me their time and their ideas, and they don't ask me for anything in return. And in fact, they constantly come back to me to see what they can learn because they helped me and I've passed them at this point, or I'm doing things that they don't know how to do. And so it's like, it's just such an amazing thing. And you're absolutely right. Lean on those people, because if you think you're going to get through the transition alone, you're wrong. You're 100% wrong. And I can prove it to you because the publicized number is 22 a day. Those 22 people every single fucking day think that they can go through it alone, and they don't pick up a phone and they don't call that buddy. And, I've got feelings about this because I mean it when I give my phone number to somebody and I'm working with a veteran and I tell them, call me if you have issues, send me that voice note or that text when you're having a bad day. I will pick up the phone. And I actually had a conversation with a Sergeant Major of 30 years the other day. And he's like, I hear this a lot from veterans, but like none of them actually follow up with me. I check in with this guy once a week. I just reach out to him like, hey brother, how's the transition going? I know last time we talked, it was rough. And it's so rewarding when you get back a message like you're really about this. Like, this is really who you are. And you're a real brother. Like, you reached out at the perfect time. And I was struggling and I didn't want to talk to anybody about it, but you just showed me that talking to somebody about it, and no matter how asinine I think it is, it works and it helps. And so, yeah, man, you're not doing this by yourself. There's plenty of us out here, myself, several other people from my network, and I'm sure your network genuinely want to help you avoid the same mistakes that we made, because they're avoidable and they're not necessary.
Agreed. And I get on Warriors for Life. They have different peer group support groups. And I get on there just because of the camaraderie on there. I get on and the same people generally are on there, and they're always looking for new. And if somebody new gets on, they're so supportive of them. I'm not getting on there because I need assistance. I'm getting on there to be supportive, to talk to somebody that, hey, my phone is, you need to talk, you call me. At the end of the day, like you said, networking, communication, being there for one another. I think that's what we're designed to do.
I love it, brother. Tell everybody how they can find you if they have parents or relatives who are of the age where a reverse mortgage may benefit them. How can they find you and get your services and all that good stuff?
So the easiest way is just to call my cell phone. I'll give that at 605-941-7029. The reason I say that, in the mortgage industry, companies are always consolidating. I give a website, like to a company website, and then they leave the business. I do have my own domain. It's jakedroge.com. So it's my first and last name. That goes right to my company website wherever I'm at. But most time it's a simple phone call. Pick up the phone and call me. We'll talk it out, set up a time if need be, run numbers, and just know that the perspective I put is if my mom was in their shoes. And that is what I truly believe in.
I love it, brother. Any final thoughts or messages you'd like to leave with the audience today?
Well, yeah, I want to thank you, Adam, for having me on today. What you're doing, you're trying to make a difference to the veteran communities in the transition, but it's bigger than that. You're trying to make a difference for life. And everybody that listens to this or sees us in a forum, know that we're here to help others. And if we can help give them the willpower or the confidence to do something big, then we won. We helped them.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I just want to be the guy I didn't have, man. That's it. That's Agreed. All I'm here to be, the guy I didn't have. Jake, I thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jake Droge, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share this with everybody. You know what I'm going to say next. Help me get this in front of 1 million veterans by the time I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025. Lofty goal. This community is the one that can do that. I know Jake's going to put out his serving veterans thing on me sometime this coming week. So I really appreciate you spending Saturday afternoon with me. Thank you so much for educating me on, and the audience on, reverse mortgages and bringing light to all the advocacy work that you're doing for the veteran community. So grateful to have you here, brother.
Thank you, and look forward to seeing you in Memphis, hopefully.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We'll try and make that happen for sure. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.